So far away, Lucas, and lovely audience watching along at home, what is your favourite mech from fiction? And by mech, I mean a robot that you can climb inside of and control.
So obviously I'm a big fan of Titanfall, I'm a massive fan of One Piece, and shout out to some of the Battle Frankies in there, but I think I just got to give it to the classic and say the Megazord.
Hell yeah, Megazord. Well, oddly enough, Lucas, we are talking about Titanfall today. Specifically, that time everyone tried to cheat at Titanfall.
It's on the way. Stand by for Titanfall.
Titanfall is a video game in which you can punch somebody into a fine mist while in control of a 20-foot-high war crime bot with the voice of a British butler.
Control transferring to pilot.
In short, it is awesome. However, like a lot of games with competitive elements, it was also chock full of cheaters. Cheaters that the developers decided to make compete against one another in what they called the Wimbledon of cheating. So Lucas, what are your thoughts on the Titanfall franchise, which sadly is just 2 games, and I think Apex Legends connects to it somehow, but whatever, I don't play Apex Legends because it doesn't have Titans in it. But how much Titanfall 1 and 2 did you play?
I mean, I definitely played a fair amount of them. I played quite a bit of Titanfall 1 on, I just picked it up on sale on Xbox One and was like, this would be great. I just wish I had a single-player campaign to get used to it all before getting blasted online. And then Titanfall 2 came out, and I was like, man, this campaign's great, but I kind of don't want to play the campaign. I kind of want to play the multiplayer. It's like, well, I can't. Yeah.
It's like, you can't win, can you? You choose your poison when it comes to Titanfall. I'm a huge fan of the Titanfall franchise. I'm sad it's dead. Supposedly, they're still working on Titanfall 3 in the background, but they said we'll make it when Apex Legends starts making money, so it's never getting made. Right? And as mentioned, there is a connection between the Titanfall universe and the Apex Legends universe. I'll put a fact bar on screen right now to establish exactly what that is, but as mentioned in the intro, I don't really care because Apex Legends doesn't have giant fighting robots in it, and I'm all about giant fighting robots.
That's the thing, right? It's they take place, as far as I'm aware, in the same universe. Literally they are on the same, worlds and shit, but just they decided to never press the Titanfall button in Apex, which is wild.
Even though the Titanfall button is one of the coolest buttons to press in a first-person shooter, because it's like...
Your Titan standing by. Call it when ready. Stand by for Titanfall.
Hey, just press a button and a giant robot falls from the sky in 1 second and then catches you out of the air like a fucking boss and just crams you into its cockpit. It's one of the coolest things in video gaming. There is no feeling in a first-person shooter quite like leaping into your Titan in midair and it catches you and puts you into the cockpit and you are, within 1 second of being caught, firing a giant machine gun. It's fantastic.
Transferring control to pilot.
Well, there's another feeling that is the exact opposite of that, and it's that moment where BT gets you out of the mech and launches you away. Does the speedball special on you.
Wind, 3 knots, heading 274. Range, 95 meters. Projectile mass, 89 kilograms. Trust me.
Yes, and I guess we've got to talk about BT. Shout outs to BT, one of the greatest companion robots in video gaming. Where just throughout Titanfall 2, you're backed up by BT, who's just the AI in control of your robot. And throughout Titanfall 2, there are some really great set pieces. The most notable, I think that a lot of people talk about, is the time travel segment, where you have access to a time travel wristwatch, which allows you to switch between the past and the future to solve puzzles.
Sorry, Anderson.
And it's one of those moments in gaming where you're like, I wish there was more of this, but also I respect them for having the gimmick for one level and then never bringing it back.
Well, that's the thing, you say set piece, but it was an entire level that they managed that for.
Yeah, an entire mission that revolves around travelling backwards and forwards in time. That could have been a video game unto itself. That section, without being in the giant robot, is fucking awesome, and I would play that video game.
What the hell? Indicating contact with an intruder, but his movement is erratic.
But it's just in a campaign that is super fun to play.
If you think about it really, like, the PS5 Ratchet and Clank game, Rift Apart, that is kind of, like, very, very similar to the main gimmick of that game of, like, jumping between two worlds instantly.
Yeah, which is wild that it's in an 8-hour campaign for a video game most people played the multiplayer of. It'd be like if Call of Duty put a really fun section in one of their games and then just never put any of those gameplay elements into the multiplayer, which I think they did for Black Ops 6, where in Black Ops 6 you have a mission where you just go absolutely apeshit and your character gets like a grappling hook and superpowers, and then they never bring that back in the multiplayer whatsoever.
Well, I've not played much of Black Ops 6. I played, like, the opening 2 missions and just called it a day, but you were telling me about, like, some remote control knife that was just too powerful to put in the multiplayer.
Yeah, you get, like, a knife with a grenade strapped to it that you control in midair, and it has so much control that you can, like, drive through doors with it and do loop-the-loops. It's insane.
And they should just have weekends where it's like, that knife on shipment, let's go.
Just give everyone that knife. We're not talking about Call of Duty, Luke, we're talking about Titanfall. And my favourite set piece in the game involves BT, and it's where BT, quote-unquote, dies, and you lose BT. And throughout all of Titanfall 2, they never let you use one of the most iconic weapons from the first game, the Smart Pistol, the gun that just auto-locks onto enemies and lets you headshot them instantly. And you're there, and you're like, why haven't they given me the Smart Pistol yet? That's like the weapon from the first game. And then you are getting your ass beat by, like, the big bad of the game, and BT's like, okay, I'm done, but make sure you get the Seer kit. You're like, what's the Seer kit? And you open it up, and it's like, I think it's like, search, evade, resist, endure. And you pull off BT's eyeball, strap it to your arm, get a pistol, and it just gives you the Smart Pistol for one mission, which, again, is a fantastic set piece. That doesn't overstay its welcome. But just the moment where it's like, well, what do? I've just got one pistol. How am I supposed to escape from a base with one pistol? Don't worry, it's the Smart Pistol.
Lock on Cooper's position. He's pulled BT's data core. You must have the Seer kit.
BT, Cooper, what's your status? Cooper, how copy? Over.
The Smart Pistol is, like, the greatest and worst thing they put in Titanfall, right?
It is indeed, yes. So, the Titanfall series has a large focus on mobility and running around as a cool giant robot. And the first game in the series was rightfully criticised. Like you mentioned, it didn't really have much of a story. Like, the story is like 4 tutorial missions that are just on multiplayer maps. And yeah, it kind of sucks that you don't have the ability to just explore that game's systems and get used to them. It doubly sucks when the game was absolutely chock full of cheaters who were getting things like aimbots and wall hacks, which is especially confusing given that you can spawn with, as mentioned, a Smart Pistol, which has already got an aimbot built in. Now, this is a game where they put an aimbot into the game, and people were paying for cheats to give them a better one.
God. And, like, let's just mention for a moment as well, like, as far as I'm aware, Titanfall 2 is still just, like, busted to play online, right?
It was for a very long time. I believe it is fixed now, but they never announced it was fixed, because announcing that it was fixed would mean they had to also tacitly acknowledge that the game was broken for like 3 years straight. And I'm not sure what the exact story is there, but my understanding of it is just one guy got pissed off and just like overloaded the servers for like 2 years straight with like DDoS attacks, and it's prevented everybody worldwide from playing any amount of Titanfall 2. Which is a shame, because Titanfall 2, I describe it as the most on-sale video game ever, because I've never not seen it on sale.
Yeah, like, that's the thing, I remember you turning around being like, let's do a stream where we play multiplayer online. I was like, okay, cool. Oh, Titanfall 2's on sale for $5. Excellent.
And just, you can't play it. And I believe you can now, but the player base has kind of dwindled to, it's just the sweats now. which I'd argue are worse than the cheaters, because the sweats, when you get your ass kicked by one of them, you can't be like, man, they're cheating. It's like, no, they're just better than me. And I don't like that.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, right? It's like when a game, the entire online presence of that game is just like, well, you can't really play it without having sucky connections, crashes all the time, etc., etc. When that pervades for years and they just are like, fuck it, we've got Apex Legends, who cares? Like, no one's going to keep playing it.
No, except for, like, the diehard fans who are, like, all in on the system. So it's one of those games that I'd love to, like, dip my toes back into every now and again, but just every time I boot it up, it's like I go into one match and get sniped from across the map. I'm like, this is why I don't play anymore. I've just not been in the world for, like, long enough. Please make a third one. Right, but, bringing it back to Titanfall 1 and all of the cheaters, though, like, Respawn, the developer, were keenly aware that cheating was a problem, and there's numerous things you can do to address the issue of cheating. The most obvious one is just ban the people cheating, because fuck them, they're ruining the game for everybody else, and Respawn were tempted to do that, but they had a much better and arguably much funnier idea. Before we get onto that, Lucas, have you experienced, like, people cheating in video games? Like, any notable stories for you? 'Cause I've been into, like, Call of Duty lobbies where there's people who've got, like, aimbots and stuff, and it's just, I really do hope the people who are using the cheats are having fun, but I can never just unimagine the idea of, like, a little kid in one of those, like, toy airplanes you get outside of a shop, rocking backwards and forwards, thinking they're flying the plane. Because the person with the cheats thinks they're good at Call of Duty, right? Like, they think they're God's gift, even though they're, like, paying money to cheat to win.
You have to wonder what the mentality is, but, you asked me if I've got experience of it, and
Yes.
I'm a long-term Destiny 1 and 2 player, and they have a mode in that called, Trials of Osiris. I can't remember what... I think they changed the name at some point, but basically, you play Trials. And it's a competitive mode within the game where you basically have to get to the lighthouse by getting 7 wins on the bounce against other sweaty teams, and you get exclusive loot.
That's basically just custom made for people to cheat, right?
Well, yeah, exactly. So, yes, I've got experience with it. It's all over the shop.
It's awful, it sucks, it ruins the game for literally everybody else except for the person who's cheating. And Respawn did have a system in place for the first Titanfall game to detect cheaters. And that system was given the quite on-the-nose name of Fair Fight. That was the name given to their, like, proprietary bit of software that would detect cheaters. And you might think that sounds stupid, but I feel compelled to mention it's not the stupidest name for one. Because the stupidest name for one is the piece of anti-cheating software used by Blizzard. And we'd like to hazard a guess at what their anti-cheat software is called, Lucas, or at least what it was called at the time I wrote this script, which was... Oh god, it was four years ago when I wrote this script.
I have forgotten it, but I'm sure I will have heard of it at some point.
It's called The Warden.
Oh, yeah.
Which admittedly is kind of cool. But in regards to Fair Fight, it would detect when a player was performing beyond human capabilities, right? Like, it's fair to say that someone with an aimbot is beyond what a human being is able to do. And what they would do is they collate as much information as they could about those players and put it all into, like, a big spreadsheet. That's what I assume anyway. When I think, like, people just, like, collating information, it's always in a spreadsheet, because a spreadsheet just seems like that's what business people do. Once they had all these names, they went through them to ensure there was as few false positives as possible. Like, you can never fully mitigate false positives in something like this, because it's a robot looking over the information. And, like, keep in mind, this is, like, a couple of years ago now, so that's quite relevant to today, right? Of, hey, a robot can't ever be 100% sure it's making the right decision. Human eyes should probably take a look at this before you, like, sign off on it.
Yeah, which is why most games, when you get banned, they have an appeal system, so that, like, most people, if they get banned knowing they've cheated, they're not going to try and appeal.
No, they're not. And that does remind me of many, many years ago when I played Halo 3. And a friend of mine got banned from Halo 3 for being too good. Because he had... One of the things you could do in, like, the old Xbox days is report someone and say you didn't want to play against them. And one of the reasons you could pick is the person is too good.
Mm-hmm.
But...
Yeah.
Apparently that was bugged, and if enough people selected that option, even though it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's considered to be a negative against, like, your profile, he got banned and he had to appeal. And I was like, what's going on with my account? I've not done anything wrong. I went, yeah, you just had too many like reports for the same thing in a short period of time. It's like, what was that thing? Too good.
And I will say, when you see someone come up in chat and accuse you of cheating when you're not cheating, that does feel pretty good.
It does feel pretty good, yeah. And that's the friend who, on Halo 3, started a new account, which I know is like a bad thing. Smurfing. It's a bad thing. But he wanted to see if he could get to the max level in Halo 3, in Lone Wolf, so playing against other sweats. And he won 100 games in a row and didn't get the max rank. And he was really salty about the fact he won 100 games in a row and didn't get like to the top rank. It's like, how much better could you possibly be than winning 100 games in a row?
And
like
when you say Lone Wolf,
playlist, a solo playlist.
That literally means he is playing on a team of one against 11 other people playing on a team of one, right?
Yep. And still didn't get his the general rank in Halo 3. But getting back to Titanfall, after they ensured there was as few false positives as possible, they decided rather than just ban all these cheaters, fuck them. Let's let them experience what it's like to play against other people who aren't playing fair. And what they did is they entered all other people detected to be using cheating software like aimbots and wall hacks to compete in a kumite of cheating. And you know what? I prefer that option to just banning them outright, because banning them outright doesn't make them learn a lesson.
Yeah, I was going to say, because banning them outright makes them go, oh, fuck, they caught me. I guess I'll try and be sneaky next time. Whereas making them feel how everybody else feels, maybe they'll remember that feeling.
Yes, and they refer to this process as putting people into, as quoted, the Wimbledon of aimbot contests. And a developer for Respawn's like, we hope that the people who paid for these cheats paid good money for them. Because if they don't fucking work, they're screwed.
Yeah, because what happens when you go in and you've paid for the shit cheat compared to somebody else paying for like the ultimate pro version?
Or just someone who's better at the game who also happens to be using cheats. Because it's like, it essentially levels the playing field, right? Of everybody has now the exact same tools. That's why aimbots and wall hacks suck, because it gives you a direct objective advantage over people who are playing without those things. If everybody has them, then the only deciding factor in a win is going to be now skill, which I'd argue a lot of people who resort to cheating don't really have. Generally, people who resort to cheating aren't that good at the game.
Generally not, or, you have systems in a game that encourage cheating, like the thing that I mentioned with Destiny, where, like, you get explicit loot that other people can't get.
Yep. And again, I imagine they walk around using that loot of like, yeah, I won this. It's like, but you didn't know, did you? Like we alluded to AI earlier. It's like people who were using AI to create art and then saying, I'm an artist. It's like, you're not though, are you? You pressed a button. That's not art. You didn't create anything. You got a computer to spit out a facsimile.
They curated the inputs to create art, Karl.
Yeah. And it's
art
wild,
that was
right?
Stolen from other people.
And it's wild the amount of mental gymnastics people will perform, so they don't have to realise they've got nothing to contribute, whether it be to like the online community of a video game or the world of art and literature.
That's the thing with generative tools like the current models of AI that people are claiming they're creating art with. It's like, that is, no matter what you're inputting, that is all generated off the back of other people's actual art that they made up and created.
Yes, and it would be funny to see the people who do that have to compete against other people using those tools, because something that Respawn did before they sent people into these servers exclusively filled with other cheaters, he just put a little warning on screen telling people, we know you're cheating, now you're going to play against other cheaters. Good luck, bye.
It's like, wait, what? Oh, yeah. No.
I'm not much on speeches, but it's so gratifying to leave you wallowing in the mess you've made. You're screwed. Thank you. Bye.
It's like, let those people who are like, oh, I'm going to use generative AI to cheat on my tests. Like, well, okay, you can go to university. You go to a shit university where you don't get a degree, and all of your stuff gets marked by an AI, and all the other people use AI. Like, well, that's not fair, because everyone's like, I submitted 15 essays, but some other guy had a better rig than me, and he submitted 45 essays. Like, well, you suck then, fuck you.
And I can't remember the exact details, but I'm pretty sure that, like, Chinese AI that was released recently that, like, sent everyone up in flames, just, like, they admitted, like, yeah, we used OpenAI as, like, a base for all, like, foundational learning, and then Microsoft were like, No, you can't steal our AI.
You can't steal the stuff that we stole. How
Like,
dare
we
you steal
stole
the things that we
shit.
stole?
We spent time and effort stealing that shit, and now you're stealing our stolen things. It's like, yeah, exactly.
That's it. It's assholes all the way down.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm a big fan of that approach of just make the cheaters and the arseholes compete against other cheaters and other arseholes and let them see how it feels to be on the receiving end of an unholy ass whooping by a robot.
Is it technically being on the end of double ass whipping by robots? Because it's like the wall hacks and shit, plus you've got just the Titan coming in.
Yeah,
confirming that kill.
Like double robot ass whomping action, and it reminds me a little bit of clips I see every now and again of Mortal Kombat, because of course people use like hacks to cheat in fighting games, and they will use them basically to just block everything, and automatically punish every attack. And the problem is that those scripts are specifically programmed to respond to stuff in a very specific way, and much like the AI of video games in the past, that could be manipulated and taken advantage of because it always responds in a predictable fashion. There are clips out there of like, oh yeah, this guy has for example, every time I throw a punch, he'll block.
Second thing to note is these script cheaters randomly stay still at the end of the rounds. They will literally just stand there, and if you do a low, it's going to be low parry or block.
And as an example of what I'm talking about here, one of the more popular scripts, I believe, is one that just automatically makes your character block every time it detects that your opponent is about to throw a punch. So automatically your character will block, so you can't be hit, which is useful, but not infallible. And there are clips out there of people taking advantage of that by, all I'll do is I'll just buffer in a punch while blocking myself, and when I see them block, grab them, and they can't break the grab because they don't know what to do. And there's just clips out of people who's like, okay, now it's like fighting AI, where it's programmed to always respond to inputs in the exact same way, which if you know what those responses are, you can easily exploit them and win every single time. And it's very funny.
And speaking of Mortal Kombat, I'm pretty sure a lot of people who have played Mortal Kombat 9 will be familiar with how much of an arsehole Shao Kahn was at the end of the story.
Yep.
And no matter what I did trying to actually fight competently as Raiden in that, or is it Raiden or Raiden? It's Raiden, right?
It's Raiden in Mortal Kombat, it's Raiden in Metal Gear.
Yes, yeah. So I was trying my best to play a competent Raiden, and I figured out that just doing his teleport on loop was the best way to just beat Shao Kahn, because he couldn't figure out what to do.
Because the AI is programmed to punish stuff with certain attacks, and it can't always differentiate between what you're doing. Same like the old school Mortal Kombat games, which literally read your inputs. Like the game would detect the button that you pressed and would always punish it optimally with a quicker, more powerful button. But if you understand that it's doing that, you can do things like jump in the air, buff it in a button to make the AI think you're doing an attack, and then just teleport. And as a result, it is possible to beast on the hardest AI in Mortal Kombat by just jumping backwards and teleporting every single time, and it will hit for free every time.
The bosses can't tech this, so you just do net into a standing string, into back one, and they always get hit by it. It sets you up for another jump in, where you just loop it over and over again. Even Shao Kahn is free to it, which is weird because he's usually quite good at escaping things the other bosses can't. This is by far the easiest run I've encountered so far. I'm pretty convinced that anybody could win with this strategy.
Same with these cheaters, right? Where they're just relying on a computer algorithm to move their character, and that algorithm doesn't have the human ability to adapt.
No, exactly. It doesn't have the capability to notice, hey, they are tricking me by buffering inputs, therefore I've got to change my tactic. It's like, no, I've been programmed to do this one thing, therefore I'm going to continue to do it and be exploited.
Like good old rock. Nothing beats that. And there's just something very cathartic about people who paid money to not play a video game they also paid money for. You're getting ripped off twice there, right?
Yeah, and again, it's just that weird thing of I don't know how people get like that. I don't know, Yeah, and I don't know how people get dopamine out of the idea of I paid for wall hacks and aimbots, so I'm therefore better. Like, I just don't know how you can justify it to yourself and not just feel sad about the whole thing.
I say it's the same way people justify to themselves, like using generative tools and then convince themselves they are an artist or a writer. Right? Just in their head, the minimum amount of effort they put in is enough to, like, for them to justify that they did the thing themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a fascinating area of psychology, and there has been studies done on it, and we don't have time to delve into those today because I've not done the proper research on them. But if you would like to see us talk about, like, topics like this or similar to this some more, you can follow the channel, or you can subscribe to Wiki Weekends, the secondary channel myself and Lucas run, which involves just finding wikis elsewhere online and going through them, see what kind of conversation arises as a result. And yeah, maybe an entry on the psychology of cheating could be a topic for a future episode, because it is fascinating, right?
It is, yeah. It's just, again, like, I don't know why, like, oh, well, I'm going to artificially rank up in a game, which means absolutely nothing to, like, make myself feel better. Like, I don't understand.
Yeah, and there's layers to it. I think back to, like, one of the earliest, like, GDQs, Games Done Quick, where there was a guy who cheated to get, like, I think a really good time in Halo, which, okay, fair enough. Sure, you're great at Halo. But then he somehow convinced himself that he was good enough at Halo to go to GDQ and live on stage just repeatedly fucks up in front of people. And I guess just after so long of being the best at speedrunning that game, they'd just convinced themselves that they can actually do it, despite not practicing. And, like, knowing for sure that all of their times were illegitimate.
And I can understand, like, when we covered the guy who cheated at Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, there's money on the line.
Yeah, millions of
pounds. I get
pounds.
it then. But just when it's like, oh, I ranked up on Titanfall, it's like, well, good for you.
Well, it's video game kudos, isn't it? The EP. You can't, like, understate the value some people place in the size of their EP, because it's all they've got.
Apparently so.
Apparently so, yeah. And it's sad. And like I said, there's many examples of it, and there's many examples out there of people just really, really publicly getting called out or failing live on air. Like, it's speaking of speedrunning, there's that dude who was like, oh, I'm the best at... who just, someone found out, like...
Seemingly the only small bits of evidence they are able to, like, actually acquire over the years seems to be, like... We don't know who this person is.
We can't say their name.
Yeah.
Which means if we don't say their name and they think that we're referring to them, and all we've said is they cheat at...